G'day, welcome to this Monday edition of Message of Hope. It is the 27th of April 2026, and of course my name is George. Now today's story is unbelievable. So unbelievable, I just have to verify it twice to make sure it is real. So, a bank branch in Bangu, Rio de Janeiro. This is April 16, 2024. So, not too long ago, right? Just a few months. Less. A woman wheels a man into a branch in a wheelchair. His head is drooping like this. His eyes are closed. But she keeps lifting his head with her hand, trying to hold it upright. So the bank staff watched. Something is wrong, they felt. Something's very wrong. She leans in too close. Uncle, are you listening? You need to sign. If you don't sign, there's no way to get the loan. I can't sign for you. Obviously, right? So she presses a pen between his fingers. Wow. Bank staff called emergency services, so the medical team confirmed what the staff had already suspected. Mr. Paulo Roberto Braga, he's 68 years old. He had been dead for 4 hours. Whew, a dead corpse. The autopsy would show he likely died lying down, not seated. So I just wonder how on earth did I get this man onto a wheelchair that's already dead? Anything that happens. And the driver had helped her move the body from the car into the wheelchair. Did he not know? Erika de Souza, that's her name, was arrested on the spot, and rightly so. She was trying to get a loan for approximately $3,000. Now, it may not sound a lot to you and me, but I don't know, in Rio de Janeiro, maybe it's like a millionaire. The amount of power, the money power that you can have for $3,000. Now, I know what your first instinct might be. I'm guessing, because mine was the same. This sounds like a scene from a dark comedy, right? The surveillance footage, the drooping of the head, the pen pressed into the man's hand. There is something almost absurdly theatrical about it. And I mean, it sounds absurd, right? It sounds like something that's from the Weekend at Bernie's movie. Crazy stuff. But I want to stay with the reality of it for a moment. Because this isn't comedy, right? It's not a laughing matter. This is what happens when a person has crossed every line available to them and kept going. Yeah? You recognize patterns in those people? This is desperation with no morals left. And here's what stopped me. It's not the shock only, it's something else as well. It's the recognition that the distance between Érika and the rest of us is actually smaller than we would like to believe. Hear me out. Not in scale, not in outcome, but in the original impulse. And that's the key word there, impulse, right? It's the impulse to manufacture an appearance, to make something look different from what it is, to secure the benefit without paying the honest price for it. Yeah, impulse. And I know that impulse. Because in 2014, Docklands, Melbourne, the area still exists. I was working in a real estate office and my manager gave the team an instruction, which happened to be very common, of course, if you're not inside. We were to place sold stickers on an apartment complex floor plan. Several of them, in fact. Now, the idea was straightforward. A prospect walks in, sees the floor plan, it's peppered with sold stickers, and concludes that the development is moving fast. Right? Feels the pull of a hot market and acts before they're ready to act independently. And what happens is when a lot of apartments get sold, the original sold stickers get pulled off. When people ask, we had to respond, the buyer backed out. But it's available for you now. And of course, I want to keep my job, right? I didn't push back. So I and others placed those stickers. Now, I don't remember coercing anyone to purchase that they didn't want. I would never do that, right? But I knew exactly what those stickers were for. And I did it anyway. Like I said, I needed a job. And that's the thing about the smaller version of this. Because it rarely announces itself as a moral crisis, right? It just arrives wearing a manager's authority and the pressure of a new job. Of course, and by the time you thought it through properly, hey, the stickers are already on the floor plan. Now, there is a story in the book of Acts that I have never been able to read since without that memory servicing. I think there's a dog approaching me. Hold on. But before that, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe, yeah? Hit the like button if you think this video is helpful. And of course, please share it far and wide. Again, tongue twister here this morning. Okay, so the book of Acts chapter 5 verses 1 to 11. It's a long one, but you get the hint. But a man named Ananias with his wife Sapphira sold a piece of property, and with his wife's knowledge, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds and brought only a part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? While it remained unsold, did it not remain in your name? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? Why is it that you have contrived this deed in your heart? You have lied not to men, but to God. When Ananias heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last. And great fear came upon all who heard of it. The young man rose and wrapped him up and carried him out and buried him. After an interval of about 3 hours, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. And Peter said to her, tell me whether you sold the land for so much. And she said, yes, for so much. But Peter said to her, how is it that you have agreed together to test the Spirit of the Lord? Behold, the feet of those who have buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out. Immediately she fell down at his feet and breathed his last. When the young man came in, they found her dead, and they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. And great fear came upon the whole church and upon all who heard of these things. That's a long one, so go back later, read it carefully. Peter said it plainly. The land was theirs. The money was theirs. I'm guessing they were not required to give any of it. But the sin was not keeping some of the proceeds back, I don't think. The sin was in the lie about it. They wanted the full reputation of complete generosity without the full cost of complete generosity, if you know what I mean. Okay? They lie their way through. And that's it. That's the thread running through all of this. Ananias and Sapphira wanted to look like something they weren't. Erika, that lady I mentioned before, wanted a dead man to appear capable of signing a loan. Cheeky girl. And then, of course, in 2014, in Docklands, where I worked, a team placed sold stickers on the floor plan to give the prospects an impression of demand that may or may not have reflected reality. Yeah. Can you see? It's the same impulse, but on a different scale. It's vastly different consequences. Thank goodness I didn't fall down and die, right, by putting those stickers. Now, I worked briefly at one of the big four banks back in 1998. And a colleague came to me one day and told me, half laughing of course, that a member of my team had asked him whether he knew of any deceased clients. Very strange questions, wouldn't you say? I mean, the way my colleague framed it, it was clearly meant to give us both a chuckle. And we laughed and we moved on. Because it really is bizarre. I'm not going to give name who my colleague was. Now, I still think about that sometimes. Because the question asked as a joke is still a question, right? Neither of us followed up, obviously. What for? It's pointless. And I genuinely don't, as if he would tell me the reason why he would want to find out whose disease. Yeah, like I said, and I genuinely don't know to this day whether it was innocent curiosity or door cracked open just far enough to see whether anyone flinched. What I do know is that the pattern I saw from the outside back in 1998, I was already capable of that for my own version of it. You see, I also left the vehicle finance office not long after I started, and that's because my manager wrote a date on the loan application, right? It was a document a client had signed, but not dated. She'd forgotten. And emailed it back to the lender as though she had. To me, that's cheating. I told him I didn't like what that happened. He brushed it off, said he would cop the blame if anything went wrong. Really? Well, I didn't believe him for a second. After all, I've seen enough to know that a person willing to forge a document, it's rarely the same person who volunteers to carry the consequences of it. I do not want to feel the full brunt of ASIC. I don't want to go to jail. So I quit. Well, the Melbourne City office I was working in was closed by the head office. Less than 3 months later, I've been told by an ex-colleague, because the headquarters in Adelaide had seen enough of their own. But here's the thing I have to be honest about. I left because of the manager's erratic behaviour and the pressure he redirected onto me when management flew in from Adelaide, right? They had to do a check. I'm not certain I would have quit purely on principle. And that's the truth of it. And I think that's worth saying, because the version of this story where I walked out on pure moral conviction, it's cleaner and more flattering and not entirely accurately. You hear what I'm saying? We're all closer to this than we present ourselves as being. And that's what Peter is saying in Acts 5. Not that Ananias and Sapphira were monsters. He's saying they lied to God, and God saw it completely, immediately, without the softening spin they had prepared for the community. Right? Didn't the Bible say, you have not lied to men, but to God? Whew. Don't try that yourself, guys. I'm warning you. Now, here's what I want to ask you, friends. It's not about Érika, not about a forged date on a document. Smaller questions, right? Like the sticker on the floor plan questions, smaller ones. Is there a version of this in your working life right now? Something wearing the shape of an instruction or a small mission or even an appearance carefully managed that you know isn't fully straight. Because the difference between that moment and what Ananias did is not as large as the scripture makes it feel. No, he didn't start at the end either. He started with a decision that probably felt, well, in the moment, entirely reasonable. Yeah, because there's money involved. Or greed, at least. God saw it anyway. Let me tell you a happy story, right? In 2021, Melbourne was deep in COVID. In fact, Melbourne is known as the longest lockdown city in the world, right? During that period. Now, I was working casually for a pawnbroking business, and that role disappeared for me later on because so many people lost their job. Yeah. Now, I was looking for full-time work in quite possibly the worst season for that most of us had ever lived through. I prayed. That's my point. I prayed. I kept asking God to open the right doors, not to engineer the outcome myself, or what I had to participate, I had to send resumes, but just to show me the direction, Lord. And he answered, right? A role came through that I like better than what I lost and pay significantly better too. That's the big one for me too. Now, it more than covered what COVID had taken. I agree. Now, I want to be honest, there were other jobs during that season I prayed about and didn't get. Doors I felt certain would open that stayed firmly shut. I don't have a formula for you, except to say pray. What I have is a pattern. When I have come to God without manufactured appearances, without the soul stickers, without the forged date, just with what is actually true about my situation, he has been faithful many, many times. And I hope it's the same story for you. Now, that's the alternative Ananias and Sapphira didn't take. Not moral superiority, not a clever strategy. It's just the willingness to bring what they actually had, say what was actually true, and trust that God would work with the honest version. Instead, they chose the performance instead. Again, I say, you have not lied to men, but to God. You can't cheat God at all. He sees it. Friends, what are you presenting to God right now that doesn't match the reality of what's actually happening? The appearance you've been maintaining, perhaps? The small adjustment you've been making? The stick on the floor plan of your own finances? I don't know. But bring what you actually have. Say what is actually true. Because he has opened harder doors than the one you're standing in front of him. and he's never once needed a forged date to do it so. All right, guys, thanks for being with me. I know it's been a long one, but I think it's important to know where we stand. You have a great day. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.